Hello, I'm Gerard Bourke. I'm an architect with the Office of Public Works. Thanks. Is that better? There's three acronyms here: the Office of Public Works, the Public Works Contracts, and BIM. And what I'm going to try and do is, in this talk, look first at how the OPW and BIM are getting on, where OPW is vis-a-vis BIM, and then the second part I'm going to look at what's in blue there now. The idea is the implementation of BIM on public works contracts. So looking at the intersection of these three acronyms, I'm about here in the thing. I work in the OPW. I use a BIM package in designing my buildings, and we use the public works contract in the OPW. That's why I've been asked to speak here today. The general title there above the line is "A Time to Embrace Public Works Contracts." Embrace is the friendly word, meaning it should be compulsory on public works contracts. So I'll come to that later in the talk, but first I'm just going to look at OPW and BIM, where we are there. I love BIM. I love working with BIM. I'm a great fan of it. It's made my life an awful lot easier. I used to have a lot of tedious work to do. Now I have loads of time to think about designing and what to do. It's wonderful. I am a fan. So in terms of above the line there, the blue thing is a time to embrace. I have embraced it. But, and I have to say this, in the OPW generally as a government body, that was not the situation at the moment. Embracing has not happened. The building model creation is where I'm involved in. It's the architect is the interesting bit, but ultimately it's how the model is used that the real potential of BIM comes into play. And there's a lot of, what shall we say, challenges to the smooth adoption of BIM within the OPW. Some very steep curves there, and the OPW is really quite early on in it. Even those of us in the OPW who are involved in BIM, we're probably only going up the learning curve at the moment. So there's a long way to go in the OPW. And the reason for that is the OPW structure, really. And I don't think that we're atypical of state bodies in this. The BIM is, the reason for using BIM at all is to increase productivity. And the model is just a database of information about the BIM. So, but it's more than just an IT solution. Now, talking to Liam Stewart, who's here today, he's the head of IT in the OPW, and Liam sees it as being much more than just an IT solution to building design. Liam calls it a new paradigm, or and even a new philosophy. And the technology is just provide a support to the process, to deliver the process. So, but to adopt BIM, there's got to be an accounting exercise. If the point of adopting BIM is to increase productivity, then it's an act of faith or an investment that spending money on BIM now will reap benefits later. So this exercise hasn't been done in the OPW. But nonetheless, we are embarking down the BIM road. And speaking to other practitioners in Dublin who have adopted BIM, I haven't come across anyone who has actually done that cost-benefit analysis. People are adopting it more as an act of faith. And listening to Andrew there about the British government standards, 20% reductions or savings, 26% reductions, they are still all acts of faith, guesses, estimates. But an investment is an investment, and the OPW is prepared to invest in BIM. So we're starting with the IT thing. As Andrew said, it's only about 20%. The other 80% is the people. But in terms of the IT investment, we are just about, over the next couple of weeks, to replace all our PCs in the architectural engineering services in the OPW. This will be the biggest single investment in computing things in the past 10 years in the OPW. And we're doing this so that we are fully compatible with BIM models. So it's being rolled out in the new year. We're getting the machines in the next few weeks. And we're getting licenses so that everyone can get seriously started on the OPW. The reason the OPW is not as perhaps receptive to the thing as it might be is that there's so much hype about BIM. It won't be held up by technology, but it will be held up by the people. We're not waiting to see what happens, but in terms of skepticism or whatever, at the RIA workshop recently, a lot of non-users were at the trough. They were probably there at the peak of inflated expectations in the OPW. Those of us who are using it were probably further down. So I'd say anyone who knows about BIM in the OPW is somewhere down here, just past the trough of disillusionment, heading up the slope of enlightenment. So, but the rest of the OPW, between skepticism and true believers, are embracing, as the title there is, who are we embracing it fully? We're probably about there, just heading towards embracing. Not fully enthusiastic. And as I say, the reason for that is the OPW structure, which is something has skipped there. But the idea is that the structure, no, okay, it's not there. The structure is about 6 or 7 different departments in the OPW. Only 2 or 3, and the smaller departments are technical and professional. And the awareness of BIM in the OPW has seeped in through the CAD door, basically. It's only the people who are using CAD are aware of it now, because they're the only people who would use that door, which leaves the majority of the OPW, the property management, property maintenance people, oblivious to the fact that it's there. They think they can get by with access spreadsheets, and they can't, but they don't know any otherwise. So awareness of BIM is going to seep through the OPW, I would say, very incrementally, building by building, and it's going to take a very long time. This what I was going to show next was this is the results of a survey that the National Building Specification did last month in England, and it's very much the same level of awareness as in the OPW, I would say. It illustrates it very well. It's still seen basically as a design tool, a data generating tool, something that architects, engineers, quantity surveyors would use. Whereas, as Andrew said, and I totally agree with him, the future of BIM in the OPW, or somewhere like that, is in the maintenance of our estate. It's not in building new buildings. And if you see here that the facilities and facilities management element is very much off the radar in this public perception, and the OPW is not an exception in that. Nonetheless, we are having some initiatives in there. As I said, we're doing the technology thing. There's an OPW BIM working group in there. It's made up of cross-professional things. The OPW has its architectural section, engineering section, quantity surveying section, M&E section. So we're setting up a working group, including the IT people, to look at how we might bring BIM into the OPW, upgrading all personal computers. We're going to do a live pilot study, picking a building that everyone in the OPW will be working on each discipline, so we can compare how it might work for us. Our historical building people are investigating laser scanning equipment at the moment, how it might be used, how it might benefit them. And there's a lot of surveys of existing occupancies. We have agreed that the data will be gathered in a format that will be eventually compatible with COBE, not in COBE format. So when all this is done, we expect to have some sort of a joined-up idea of how BIM might fit into the OPW, which is to say, probably a year or so away. So that's basically where the OPW and BIM is. To speak to the public works contracts thing, we're investing in BIM as an act of faith, as I said, and acts of faith are what people do in times of doubt, when they're looking for certainty. And that's where the public works contract comes in. The generator of that, and Damien Keogh will speak to this after me now about the public works contract, but it was generated by a need to have cost certainty in the building industry. When we tender for a project, that will actually cost that at the end of the day. And the thing is, how would BIM add to that, to the cost certainty? If you're using BIM, does a BIM mindset increase the programming certainty? Does it increase quality certainty. What sort of certainties do you get by using BIM? I don't know is the answer to that. There's a chap in Britain, was speaking in Britain, a US architect called Phil Bernstein, who happens to be a vice president of the retailers of Revit. And he's saying that he sees a move towards more collaborative in the States between contractors and others. But I really don't think that's happening here. And I think the public works contract is part of that. The great advantage of BIM is that it promotes, or for it to work effectively, is that it's in a collaborative environment. Now, the anecdotal evidence within the OPW and feedback is that the public works contract hasn't increased this collaborativeness. If anything, it's made things more confrontational. So the reason seems to be that contractors are underbidding so much, or such low fee bids, that the only way they can get the money back is by getting extras and by challenging and being confrontational on the public works contract. Now, obviously, that confrontation must be partly due to the poor economy at the moment, the collapsed economy. So it's hard to know how much the public works contract is causing the confrontation rather than the economy. But nonetheless, it's working against the philosophy of BIM that everyone should collaborate together. That said, BIM does have some positives in the public works contract, or the public works contract seems to work well with BIM on at least two areas that I can think of. One is that, that's better, the main claims under most things that have gone to arbitration lately have been due to uncoordinated drawings within the design team. The engineer's drawing said this, the architect's drawing said that, and we're in dispute straight away. So if everyone's working off the same model, or at least running clash checks on their models regularly before we go to tender, that should be a huge amount of the claims on the public works contract eliminated straight away. So it seems obvious that if BIM was adopted for projects, it would save a lot of costs under the PwC. The second area where I can see BIM being useful is in the public works contract. Unlike the GDLA, everything has to be designed up front before you go to tender, which means a huge amount of work has to be done earlier than it had done before. And I think BIM really lends itself to this. You can create infinite number of sections, plans, details at a drop. Do I get a fiver? Or is that just Andrew?
No, it's over to me, sir.
Oh, right, okay. So those two things, the amount of information you can get out very quickly from a model early on in the design process, and the lack of the coordination between the design teams under the PwC should be great savings there. That's at the micro level. At the macro level, the idea of the OPW as a government body and the government promoting BIM, making it compulsory even, I think you have to separate out policy and practice. Now, the OPW really isn't a policy arm of the government. We're practice. We are the technical advisors to the government, which means we advise them on technical issues, on the nitty-gritty of procurement of buildings, if the site is appropriate, that sort of thing. But technical advising is not the same as giving advice on technology policy. That's not really the OPW's job. That said, CITA did ask us if we could see a way that CITA themselves could encourage government bodies, government departments to promote BIM in the industry. Ralph at the RIAI workshop showed ways that BIM could help the Department of Education. I think, looking at it, that there are probably three other departments, I'll come back to that in a moment, that they might help in. But just to say, in this idea of a social responsibility of the OPW BIM, I'm using BIM. For whose sake are you using it? And I'm really using it for my own sake. It makes life easy for me. And that has a knock-on effect that helps the team, and it probably helps the project. But in the OPW, we're not really looking at the profession or a duty to help society by using BIM. It's quite a selfish approach to it. But that said, if it was to be used in other government departments, I think the Department of Environment is an obvious place. They're responsible for the built environment. And they set the building regulations, they set carbon emission standards, and BIM has a very good fit with both of those. I also think the BIM with Departments of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation. Now, this used to be called Industry and Commerce. and they would have a responsibility for policy on the building industry. And certainly it fits in with enterprise, with innovation. BIM is clearly an innovative project, and that's where grants are as well. So if you're looking for promoting BIM in government, I would start straight away with the Department of Innovation. And finally, the Department of Finance. This is our sort of parent department in the OPW. If there's a government policy on the building industry, or more likely how the lack of a building industry impacts on the economy, that would be a Department of Finance matter. And also, of course, the Department of Finance actually wrote the PwC, the public service contract, so they would have a big impact there if it was stitched in at that point. So to summarise, the OPW we do see BIM as being the future. It's just how soon it'll reach us is anybody's guess. We have a building stock of about 2,500 properties at the moment. To have all of those BIM'd up and into a BIM model would be a mammoth task and take years and years. It'll probably happen building by building as each one needs to be maintained or whatever. It'll be a long, long time before we're fully BIM'd up. Nonetheless, we're starting on the technology side of things. But as I said earlier, it is the OPW management structure, and that slide is gone as well. So, but ultimately, I think it's funny, it was there when we ran this earlier. At the moment, those 7 departments are all sort of silos, and each one looks after its own little thing. And for BIM to work effectively, it needs a collaborative environment. So really, it would, for BIM to be fully implemented in the OPW, it means a fundamental change in OPW culture, removing all the silos, all the little individual departments. So instead of being 7, there might be just one big department called building, and all the buildings would be based on a BIM-based database. And I think that would be the future. Okay, thanks.